Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited to go through our reInvent recap today. This is a whirlwind of a presentation. Okay, so stick with us. Let's see how much of this we're able to get through. So, first of all, I would be completely remiss if I did not mention the amazing work that the AWS team puts into building this deck. For many years, it was my job to build this deck right after reInvent. Really excited now to be able to take the work that comes from the AWS team and put our spin on it. Here's a helpful legend. Something that is listed in green is GA. Things that are in private public preview are in yellow. Things that are in gated preview are in red, and things that are coming soon. Uh, whether that means within the next 5 years, looking at you time stream, or whether that means right away, these things are in blue. Now, there's this thing that happens every year called pre-invent, and a lot of releases get pushed into pre-invent. We like a lot of those releases, so I'm going to cover quite a few of them. There were huge wins that happened this year within pre-invent, so definitely want to call those out. Why should you listen to me? You maybe should not, but I've spent 18 years writing all sorts of software. Started out hacking video games, went on to NASA where I worked on various canceled programs at this point. Went on to MongoDB where I worked on a bunch of different things, everything from the Python driver to other stuff. Went to SpaceX where I worked on the CI/CD system for the rocket hardware software stack. Went to AWS, spent a good long time at AWS building all kinds of great software, learning from all sorts of different customers across virtually every industry. Went over to Facebook where I worked on the PyTorch team, and then I've spent the last 4 years here at Caylent, where I have the pleasure to serve as the CTO and to work with an amazing group of people who have all done really impressive things for our customers. And if you want to learn more about Caylent, please feel free to go to caylent.com. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm Randman on Twitter. I'm Randman on pretty much everything these days. So reInvent this year, we had 60,000 attendees. There were 2 million viewers online. And I found this a little bit suspect because I've never seen that many people on, the reInvent live stream before. But, it said 2.5 million people right there on Twitter. There were 3,500 sessions, 3,000 speakers, 530 total updates in this deck. There's a couple more than that I will call out. And, there were 2 great sessions from the Caylent team. There was David Victoria's session, Dev 301. We'll post a link to that a little bit later. And then Brian Tarbox's session, Dev 317. If you have the opportunity to look those up on YouTube, please go ahead. There were more than 1,500 recordings, everything from 23 minutes to 1 hour and 5 minutes. I watched all of those recordings, a lot of vendor spam, unfortunately, but I think that's how sponsorships work at conferences. We are going to cover some of the things in those sessions that weren't super prevalent in the default recaps and the default information. Before we get into it, just want to give a quick overview of what happened for Caylent at reInvent. We got 4 Partner of the Year awards. So we won Migration Consulting Partner of the Year globally. We won GenAI Consulting Partner of the Year globally. Very proud of that one. We won Security Consulting Partner of the Year globally. And we also won Caylent Consulting Partner of the Year. We did some sessions on AI Live. Like I said, Brian Tarbox and David Victoria did a great session. It was really cool that I got quoted in Swami's keynote. That was a nice feeling. I really do think that Agent Core is a fantastic set of features and a good evolution of what it means to build agentic AI in the cloud. We worked with the AWS Transform team on a number of things. And then our fearless leader, Only the Paranoid Survive, Val Henderson, got featured in AWS Game Changers. This is how we're going to go through it. So first, I'm going to get a lot faster here. So be ready. First, we're going to cover every year the global infrastructure updates. I always do this by the numbers. Then we're going to do compute and containers. We're going to talk about edge. This is hybrid cloud stuff too. Networking, content delivery, that's CloudFront, that sort of stuff. We're going to go into storage migration and the lack of Oxford comma, transfer services, databases, analytics, machine learning, serverless, developer tools, management and governance, security, identity, and compliance. There's going to be some overlap in those sections because these tools across those two sections, they do kind of apply to each other. There are some things that are quality of life improvements, and there are some things that are really compliance and audit improvements. Um, then we'll talk about business applications. Really, that's mostly Amazon Connect. There's a couple other things in there. But if that's it and you're ready to go, this is my favorite talk to give every year. I'm going to make mistakes. That's okay. There's going to be updates. I hope to give this talk a couple more times, but let's get going. First of all, global infrastructure updates. Here are some key figures. There are 38 launch regions at this point. There's 3 more on the way, 120 availability zones, 10 more on the way. That's actually 1 more than is needed to launch those 3 new regions. There's 43 local zones, more on the way, 33 wavelength zones. Don't know if there's more on the way. They didn't say that. There's 140 plus direct connect locations. I actually think that's a higher number already since I updated these figures. There's 700 points of presence. There's 900 embedded points of presence and 13 regional edge caches. I think the 13 regional edge caches probably needs to be updated. They probably have at least 1 more at this point, but they don't tell us. There's 9 million kilometers of fully redundant 400 gigabit parallel fiber that circles the globe. This links and peers with more than 10,000 different networks. Fun piece of trivia, if you are interested in AWS's ASN, it's AS16509. So if you're ever working with BGP, now you know how to peer with AWS. All of this investment, by the way, there's applied photonics labs that exist in Sunnyvale and other places around the country that do work into making this fundamental infrastructure work at the scale that AWS operates at. People forget that US East 1 isn't a building. It's probably hundreds of buildings that have hundreds of redundant fiber paths. The capital investment and infrastructure investment necessary to build this level of resilience and operational capacity is very high. So if you ever wonder why NAT gateways cost so much, you'll hear me complain about that later, by the way. This is why they have to recoup the upfront capital investment of the R&D necessary. I mean, to push the boundaries of applied photonics, to push the boundaries of the innovation of the top of rack switches. These are pictures that I took at reInvent of the top of rack nitro switches, some of the different fiber bundles. This big old, is that 4-inch conduit? And then the backplane, all kinds of really cool stuff. If you're interested in these things, there's a ton of great sessions at reInvent that cover the global infrastructure side. With that said, let's hop into compute and containers. First, a quick primer on instance names, because I notice people can get confused. There's going to be an instance later on in these slides where you're going to need this decoder ring. So essentially, the instance family will tell you what that instance is typically geared towards. It's a compute optimized, M is general purpose, maybe T is burstable, I is storage optimized. Companies like PlanetScale will use these metal storage optimized instances with a ton of NVMe storage. Then you have the generation of instances. And what's interesting about the generation is always the price performance gets better, right? So the dollars you spend and the performance you get have improved every single time. But what is interesting is for many years, up until about 2022, the dollar per hour on each subsequent generation was actually lower than the previous generation. With some of the more recent generations, both across AMD and Intel, the price has gone up a little bit. And there's a good graph that I posted a couple of weeks ago that shows sort of the evolution of pricing across these instance families. And then in terms of capabilities, A is for AMD, G is for Graviton. We'll talk a little bit about Graviton later. I is for Intel, D is for instance store volumes, N is for network optimization, B is for block storage optimization, E is for extra storage or memory, and Z is for high frequency, not to be confused with this other Z, which can also be an instance type. There's also VT1s for transcoding. There's FPGAs, there's ASICs. The world is vast and full of instances. And if you can't find something that fits what you need on AWS, you might need to reconsider some of your deployments. The size is the last part. We try to baseline all of our calculations around a large size. There's also a metal prefix, which gives you access to the whole host. So the first thing that they talked about was the M9G instances built with Graviton 5. I think this was in Peter's keynote, although someone can correct me if I'm wrong. These aren't actually out yet. We at least haven't gotten our hands on them. Every generation of Graviton has been really impressive. I tweeted the other day to try and find a picture of this 5th gen one. No one would help me. people were very kind and polite and sent me little logos of it, but would really love to see if anyone has like a real picture of the thing. And I love going to the expo floor at reInvent and getting pictures of the actual hardware. This year I forgot to swing by the Graviton booth, unfortunately. The interesting thing about these workloads, and this was covered in Peter's keynote in 2024, is that Graviton is a different operating paradigm for a processor compared to what you would get out of an x86. The instruction set is still pretty big, but it's smaller. It's ARM based, and it has access to the vector instructions within the ARM ecosystem. But it also has fast access to various forms of on-chip cache in a way that does have outsized performance benefits for workloads that are large pieces of data moving through the CPU quickly. And the other thing I'll say here is that the speed at which you can get things done with the ARM ecosystem and Graviton these days is much greater, and it has essentially become our default platform. Very interesting result from Matt Garman's keynote is he mentioned that they're putting more Graviton in AWS regions, availability zones, and everything today than anything else. So that means they're landing more Graviton than Intel, than AMD, than NVIDIA. I thought that was a very interesting statistic, and it's probably good for their margins. So the other thing is the TRN3, the Trainium 3 servers are generally, they are more available than they were when they were announced last year. These are massive, massive chips and servers. And just the thing that is interesting about these is Trainium and Inferentia were being worked on before ChatGPT started, right? November of 2022, ChatGPT comes out, generative AI begins to take over. This custom silicon, this investment in building these things, it started before that revolution. And the Trainium 2 and the Trainium 3 probably went to tape out before we realized how big and how much HBM these models were going to need. But by combining these and building a really powerful backplane on these servers, you're able to run on the silicon that it requires less power and you get more throughput than what you're able to do with GPUs alone. So the price performance is excellent. Now, the downside is to move things into this, you have to use the Neuron SDK. Now, very interesting is that currently the fastest way to get Opus 4.5, Anthropic Claude 4.5 Opus, is to run on Bedrock. And Garmin said in his keynote that all of this inference is actually running on Trainium. So by working with Anthropic and continuing to invest, they've been able to achieve a higher end-to-end latency, lower end-to-end latency than what you're able to get on GPUs. This is very interesting. Even more interesting is talking about Trainium 4, which they announced or pre-announced at Matt Garman's keynote. And this is interesting because it's going to have PyTorch native capability. I think that means they're going to support all of the various PyTorch operators. And then they're talking about the backplane being supported by NVLink. That could be a significant game changer. And in the development, it's already showing a 6x FP4. FP4 is floating point 4. It's a quantized version of floating point math. And 3x FP8 performance. And it also has 4 times the memory bandwidth. When you think about TPUs and you think about GPUs, Trainium 4 is absolutely going to be a contender. I hope that we get access to it before the next reInvent. So always, I'm glad they say coming soon and they don't say like you can get this today. That's always a frustration that our customers express to us when AWS says, hey, this is in preview, contact your rep if you need access to it, but really it's coming soon. I do love the way they're doing these designations now where they say, hey, this isn't ready yet, it's coming soon. And if they say it's in preview, it really is in preview. That has saved a lot of time and effort for a lot of people. These QR codes on the side, if you want to go and learn more, these were all made by the AWS developer advocacy team. So again, a huge shout out to them and a huge thank you to them for helping prepare a lot of these slides. Okay, everyone remembers that instance primer that I showed you a little while ago. let's break down this instance. This is the X8 AEDZ instance. So if you break it down, A means X is the size of the instance, is the family. It's a memory optimized instance, so you can run a ton of Minecraft on it. If you know, I'm just teasing. Um, it has A for the AMD processor. This is the 5th gen AMD EPYC, the Turin. And E is for extended memory. And D means it has local NVMe SSDs. And Z is for high frequency processors. So it's got a high clock speed, it's AMD, it's got SSDs, and it's got more RAM. So if you look at the big ones here, you have 96 vCPUs, you've got 3072 or 3 terabytes of RAM, and you've got NVMe SSD storage of 7.6 terabytes, and then 75 gigabits per second of network throughput. Really a powerful server. And one of the things that these Nitro cards do, which is and up to a 5 gigahertz CPU frequency, which is also really cool. One of the things that these Nitro cards and this investment in the Nitro hypervisor and the Nitro family of hardware and software, it allows AWS to do optimizations at several different layers, not at the host layer, but also at the rack layer. And you can do things with Elastic Fabric Adapter, where you can translate things that would have typically been over a specialized networking protocol, like an SRIOV, going to a scale SRD style network over UDP, reliable UDP. What do they call it? Scalable, reliable datagram protocol or something like that. That can be difficult to change your software to leverage. But what EFA and other things within the Amazon Linux ecosystem allow you to do, you can just send your regular old TCP traffic, and it will take care of the multipath routing and all of the other things for you on the back end. That's a really powerful investment, and I do think we see benefits from it in some of our larger scale customers. These are available right now in US West and Tokyo, and I think they already announced a couple of other regions. And they've got a 32-to-1 ratio of memory to CPUs, which is kind of different from the U instance class, which is, I think, some of the biggest servers that I've seen. All right. So we also got the P6e GB300 Ultra servers. These are GPUs from NVIDIA. They are obviously very powerful. If you get one, go for it. It's going to be really, really hard to get one in the short term, I bet. One of the things that we found when we need to get access to these large scale GPUs is we can do capacity reservations. And I'll talk more about capacity reservations later on in this presentation. Okay, moving off of instances, by the way, there were several other instances launched. Those were the ones that I particularly care about. I want to move into containers, and we'll talk about EKS first. So one of the really cool things that launched was EKS capabilities. Now, this is basically saying that instead of you having to go and run Argo and ACK and KRO, you're going to let AWS run and maintain that for you. And this runs in EKS service-owned accounts that are fully abstracted from you. You don't have to worry about it. And it simplifies the operational overhead of running within Kubernetes. The pricing for this, they don't really call it out in the various press releases or blog posts, but if you go dive through the pricing page and then you work on several hours of spreadsheets, what you'll find out is if you turn on all of these, it's going to cost you about $200 a month. So for a really small dev cluster, probably doesn't make a ton of sense. But for larger clusters where $200 a month is a drop in the bucket compared to your compute spend, it makes perfect sense, right? Because you're taking away another thing that you might have to manage. Also, they launched and the way that it's charged, by the way, is that each of these capabilities, of which right now there are 3, there could be more later, you're charged a fee per hour that it's running and operating. And then for the resource management, I think you're charged a small fee per hour per resource. This is a very interesting launch that happened right before reInvent, which was a provision control plane in EKS. we have done a ton of Kubernetes migrations here at Caylent, hundreds of them, I would say. And one of the problems we face when we're going into EKS is that we have to pre-warm the thing. I can't get the etcd stuff that's in the EKS control plane to scale magically at the rate that I might need it to. So what's very cool about this is I can pay a premium to AWS to say, hey, I want to go ahead and have my control plane scale in the background because I know I'm going to be racking and stacking containers really, really quickly here. So very nice quality of life launch. I think the pricing is right too. I don't think they're overcharging you or anything. And one thing that I'm still a little unclear on is if I don't need this in perpetuity, how do I scale it up and down? Are there limitations? I didn't have time to go through the docs. So if anyone knows that, would be interested in finding out. We also got enhanced networking observability within EKS. This is helpful. The whole networking observability chain within AWS continues to improve. So this is more of an extension of that capability. There are still weird things that happen with things like Istio and Envoy. There was another launch within EKS, which was related to Envoy, where you can get those logs into CloudWatch now more easily. Overall, the observability story within AWS continues to improve across virtually every service. That said, what would be very cool and a feature request that I'll put out there to the people who work on EKS, take what we have in terms of network observability here and the service map here and the service discovery here, and then also give me a zoomed out view from the greater transit gateway cloud WAN version of my network. That is the epitome, right? As I zoom into a region, as I zoom in into an AZ, and I want to see how this service is actually operating and scaling, would love to be able to do that all from one interface. We built something like that many years ago, I think 2019. I think we called it Panopticon or something, but that was an internal project. So would love to see something like that exposed to consumers. We got interruptible capacity reservations. So this is interesting because you do the capacity reservation to be able to get the GPUs typically. I mean, it's not just GPUs, but it's GPUs. So you do that, and then you're over here trying to do some work, and you don't want to be preempted unless your workload is already designed to take advantage of things like Spot, and you don't mind being preempted and having that instance yanked out from under you. Well, now you can get these capacity reservations at a lower cost. So this is a nice balance. I do think the pricing matrix of EC2, when you put this in alongside Spot, alongside everything else, is starting to get really complicated. So one of the things that we're working on with Brian Tarbox on my team is we're trying to build a guide of, hey, there's all these different ways of running code in AWS now. What should I do and what should I look for? And so I hope to have that flowchart out sometime before the end of the year, but it might slip into next year. We got ECS Express mode. This is just nice. I mean, kudos to the ECS team. This came out right before reInvent, and it's a new developer experience from ECS that lets you launch, available, scalable, containerized applications with one command. You have a Docker container. You want it to run. You don't want to have to worry about security groups and ALBs and all these other things. You just want the thing to go and launch. This is a great way to do that. That said, I'm a little confused how this works with App Runner, and there's a couple different ways of running these things now. So I think it would be good to see some consolidation from the AWS team. Like, is App Runner going to continue to be invested in? I don't know. And how does this relate to App Runner? I find this equally easy to use compared to App Runner. All right, we also got fully managed MCP servers on ECS and EKS. These are helpful. I don't think these MCP servers are as powerful as they will eventually become. Really, in many ways, they don't take action. They mostly just report information, and it's kind of a conglomeration of prompts. That is how most MCP servers start. So not angry about it, but looking forward to the evolution of this and the things that it's able to do going forward. And this is built on top of the new MCP proxy for AWS. We got an AI-powered experience for ECS and EKS. And I have to say, I'm not crazy impressed by this launch. This one, we ran it on a couple of things and tried to figure it out. Let's just say there's more improvement that is needed here. And you might be better off just copy pasting whatever error message you got into Claude for now, with obviously the AWS MCP on. Managed image signing for Amazon ECR. This is a nice quality of life feature. Wouldn't turn it on during development, right? Because you're going to push a bunch of different container versions during development. Keep in mind, I think it's about 2 cents a pop, and obviously that varies over each region, but 2 cents a pop to sign these. So once you're in prod and you want to have like cryptographically signed off packages and CI/CD, this is a good thing to turn on. It removes some extra steps. EC2 image builder got auto versioning. What's really interesting is there's all these different things we used to do in image builder pipelines where we would have, okay, well, this is done. I can stop polling. So now I'm going to go and, send a API gateway call or a webhook call off to this Lambda function that's going to go and copy it to this region and do all these other things. But they also launched all of these enhancements to image builders being able to call directly to step functions or call directly to Lambda. So a lot of the things that we used to need to go to Lambda for, they've also solved here with some of this versioning and other improvements. We got instance lifecycle policies, enhancements for EC2 autoscaling. Very important here is that you can do things that stop these instances from, they can get yanked out of the autoscaling group, but they can be kept around, or they can fire off hey, send all of your logs to this thing before you actually close down. So you can do a little more granular operations than you could previously with continue and abandon. So previously, continue and abandon made ASG terminate the instance as soon as the lifecycle hook timeout or elapsed. Now you can say, hey, if nothing happens, just keep it around, and then ideally page somebody. I'm sorry for anyone who is still on DevOps duty in 2025. Almost 2026. We got the archive storage class for Amazon ECR. This is very helpful, especially if you have to keep some of these containers around for various compliance regimes. I think, if you take EBS Recycle Bin and AWS Backup and kind of put everything into one control plane, that would be nice, because then I could have certain compliance regimes enforced as a single lifecycle policy for everything. And I could programmatically add or remove services. But listen, this is great. I'll take it. Saves money. Not complaining at all. Just saying future would be nice to have an all-in-one. All right. This is the greatest thing since sliced bread. How many times have you started Amazon Linux and then had to go and compile FFmpeg from source? Or some arbitrary package, pandas, NumPy, glibc, LLVM, everything under the sun. With the original versions of Amazon Linux, you had to go and build it from source. And so you'd waste 30 minutes on startup just downloading all the dependencies, compiling the thing, and then ideally you'd package it into an AMI. But then when the new release would come out, you have to do the whole shindig over again. These are managed packages from AWS. They mirror the EPEL 9 repo. It has over 1,000 packages. So to the entire Amazon Linux team who worked on this, thank you. We all get hours of our lives back because of this work. Could have used it about 3 years ago, but we'll take it now. There were a ton of other great announcements. Like I said, there were a bunch of C8 instances, Intel and AMD. There were some other instances with the NVIDIA Blackwell Ultra GPUs without some of the backplane stuff. Autoscaling got synchronous APIs where you can not wait for autoscaling to do something. You can tell autoscaling, hey, I'm doing this thing now. CloudWatch got some agent management, which is great, although please avoid ClickOps. Um, the the Mac instances now support Tahoe, and we got the M4 Mac instances. Another great thing. EC2 auto scaling has root volume replacement now. That allows you to do certain patching activities without having to go and redo the whole instance. There's encryption attributes for instance type selection, and the AMI image builder. All of that stuff got some lineage visibility and some other nice things. On the ECS side, we got scaling delays. We got some of the really nice things with deployments. You know how in API Gateway we already have like linear scaling, and with code deploy, we have linear scaling. We have canary deployments. We have a couple of nice features in API Gateway. We now have that in ECS as well. And then, like I said earlier, Service Connect now has Envoy access logs. We got improved service availability during rolling deployments. That was another great one. Amazon Bracket is Amazon's quantum stuff. I've got to be honest, I don't use this, so I don't really feel qualified to tell you good or bad, but they added some enhancements there. The cost for SQL Server running on EC2 got reduced for high availability. This does some clever things with like the witness and shared drive and all kinds of other good stuff. And like I said, EC2 Image Builder got support for Lambda and step functions. So a lot of the things that we used to use Lambda and step functions for, and these random webhooks after an image build would complete, we now don't need, because they also added all this other great stuff. So pros all around, I guess. And we also got Elastic Beanstalk support for Java 20, Amazon Credo 25, and Tomcat 11. This is interesting because the year is 2025. I remember working on like EB extensions in 2014, 11 years ago now, 12 almost. And I don't, the fact that Elastic Beanstalk is not just around and kicking, but continuously innovating is really impressive. We had the opportunity to meet with the Elastic Beanstalk team earlier this year, and I was really surprised to see how well Windows workloads are running on Elastic Beanstalk. That is not something that I would have expected. And if you have Windows applications, .NET applications that you think would benefit from a little bit more of a managed service offering, the Elastic Beanstalk Windows capabilities are solid. I'm really impressed. Okay, let's get into edge networking, lack of Oxford comma, and content delivery. There's 18 announcements here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about hybrid cloud and things like that as well. One thing before we get into this is there's going to be a common theme throughout all of our networking or encryption focused components, which is the theme of post-quantum cryptography. I'll talk a little bit more about it as we get going. So first thing is the AWS AI factories. These are Trainium NVIDIA GPUs, things landed in your data centers. I have to be honest, couldn't get much info on the pricing for this one. So would love to learn more, would love to give some guidance here, but there's just not enough information. I do think if you can get Trainium in your own data center, you're probably going to get pretty decent price performance out of that. The NVIDIA GPUs, there's this conversation of like, well, why would I go to AWS AI factories when I could just go to NVIDIA Direct, or I could do DGX or something like that? And I think those are valid questions. And I don't think that AWS has given us the answers to those questions. I think it makes sense. I'm not saying this is something they shouldn't do. I just can't provide any guidance on it because, again, there's no information on pricing. So there's also this interconnect multi-cloud. Weirdly, so this has been talked about, by the way, since 2023. And I think Google actually accidentally leaked that this was being worked on in 24. And the way that this works essentially is that it is an interconnect between the AWS cloud and the Google cloud and potentially any other service provider, but right now it's just Google. So, US East 1 has a private connection to US East 4 in Google, or US West 1 has a connection to US West 2 in Google. US West 2 has a connection to US West 1 in Google. And these are all private networks. Again, there's no pricing yet that I was able to find. So how do you as a user take advantage of this, and what extra does it cost you? I don't know yet. I hope to have answers to this later on. What is really cool about this is we do have a ton of customers who will use things like BigQuery, or they want to use TPUs. Being able to go out to Google Cloud to get to those, but do it over a private link is very powerful. And then you don't have to spin up a VPN or some other convoluted networking situation. VPN site links got or site to site got 5 gigabit per second improvement off of the 1 gigabit per second improvement. So that's another nice little pro from AWS. The idea, I think, is that they expand this to other clouds, and maybe that means Oracle, maybe that means Microsoft. If you think about some of the other bandwidth alliances that have formed with the Cloudflares and the Microsofts of the world, this is a step in the right direction, in my opinion. Curious to see how it evolves. Still curious on pricing. There is a GitHub repo. If you go to github.com/AWS/interconnect, you can see how CSPs are able to take advantage of this. It's an open specification. We'll find out more. Interconnect last mile. So if you need AWS to go dig some fiber for you, they will go to Lumen and they will make things work. We have worked with Lumen a number of different times with some of our customers. This is a nice quality of life feature that is going to help a number of customers, branch offices and data centers in weird places that don't necessarily have the right connectivity to the right internet exchange point or the right exchange point for AWS to get into AWS in a fashion that makes sense for their networking requirements. Route 53 global resolver for Anycast DNS. It's a mouthful. So listen, here's one of the interesting things. They have renamed Route 53 resolver to Route 53 global resolver, meaning the public facing one that does split resolution across public and private domains, and Route 53 private resolver. So this supports DNSSEC. It supports DNS over HTTP, DNS over everything. I said private resolver. I am wrong. It is actually Route 53 VPC resolver. So global resolver, the thing that does the split DNS, and then VPC resolver works within your VPC only. So this is an interesting deployment. It supports IPv6, it supports IPv4, and it's a single set of Anycast addresses that can route queries to the nearest AWS region, and it can reduce your overall latency. Obviously works within the regular Route 53 DNS firewall stuff, filtering rules, managed domain lists, all the things that you're used to having. And yeah, I mean, I have nothing but happy things to say about this. Thank you, AWS, for launching it. We got accelerated recovery in Amazon Route 53. I'm sure no one has ever seen US East 1 go down. That's never happened in the history of cloud. This is interesting because to me, this feels like a response to some of the recent periods of decreased availability, let's say. And there's another function within Route 53 called ARC, Application Recovery Controller. ARC is what we have used with a number of our customers in the past who have really strict resilience requirements. So we have gone and helped those customers kind of build out the cellular architecture to limit the blast radius of any potential failure, and then the quick recovery capability by having the multiple control plane situation that ARC provides. This seems to be less expensive than ARC, but you have a different RTO. The recovery time objective with ARC is seconds. This is 60 minutes. So the math on ARC, you're going to spend a minimum of about $2,000 a month just for one thing. On this, it's less. It's not a ton less, but it could be worth it. What is unclear to me is what happens when you enable and disable it. I think that was in the docs somewhere, and I've just sort of forgotten. But yeah, great launch in, I think, a nice balance between the various resilience offerings. We got network firewall proxy. Really, I think this is only available in US East 2 right now. I'm not sure why. I'm sure it'll roll out more broadly later. But this is basically taking over a lot of the proxy management stuff. People are deploying more and more of these proxies to measure different capabilities and have different rules and to prevent data loss prevention and to see how people are using AI, all this other stuff. This is just a central managing feature for that. So another good launch. MTLS support in CloudFront. I hate MTLS. I think it never should have been invented. That said, we live in a world where I don't get my way sometimes, and I think that's just fine. MTLS is used, right? It still exists. It's used in a lot of IoT systems. It's used in manufacturing systems. It's used in cameras. CloudFront supporting it is a good thing. Obviously, there is demand if they're going to go and build this. So good job to CloudFront for launching this. One thing I'll say, if I were to design this differently, I would have sort of like a hierarchy of certs that I would look into, but that's a whole other more IoT discussion based thing. Bring your own IP for any cast static IPs in CloudFront. Great quality of life feature and good job. This helps a lot of customers who just unfortunately cannot change some of these IPs because their downstream customers have allow listed and depend on all the traffic coming from those IPs. We got flat rate pricing plans and Amazon CloudFront. I gotta say this is a weird one. You get some features, you don't get others. I was involved in some of the discussions about this, and the guidance that I gave is not what ultimately the feature set arrived at. I think there's a way of doing this that makes it even more competitive with the Cloudflares of the world. That said, the $200 a month one and the $15 a month one do make a ton of sense to me. I think that's a fine place to land. The $1,000 a month one, without having certain SLAs and very precise legal terms in place, it feels interesting. So yeah, I've also got to reveal I've probably got some bias here, right? Because I've been working in AWS for a very long time. And to me, pay as you go is ideal versus the commit. Now, it's a conversation for another time, deeper, longer conversation about the global macroeconomics of CDNs. We got VPC encryption controls at an org level for VPC. This is just a really nice feature where we can enforce via various regimes encryption controls within a VPC so that people can't spin things up that they shouldn't be able to spin up. And they can't send traffic in a way that they shouldn't be able to. So really, really helpful for HIPAA, for PCI, for FedRAMP, and a number of other compliance regimes. We can talk more about some of the in-transit stuff that happens. Use AES 256 GCM. I do want to talk about post-quantum, though. So you'll see me talk about post-quantum several times throughout this presentation. I want to tell you now what I know about it and why I think it's interesting. There's a set of it. So let's first talk about how TLS works. TLS works by using techniques like elliptic curve cryptography and Diffie-Hellman and key exchanges. And really what you're doing is you're using an untrusted side to agree on a shared secret. And that shared secret is then used to encrypt information over time. But that shared secret is never actually transmitted over the wire. So there are certain shared priors that each side has, and then there's a set of keys that you arrive at for mutual encryption. Now, the problem with this is that many of these algorithms to build these keys, they depend on modular arithmetic, clock arithmetic. Now, quantum computers are particularly good at collapsing modular arithmetic into distribution and finding the correct result. Now, they do this through a quantum Fourier transform, which if I were better at math, I would be able to explain to you, but I'm not good at math. So we're just going to accept that quantum computers can do this thing in very, very quickly, that it would, the prime factorization side of it would take a classical computer a very, very long time to solve. So, if you imagine the distribution of probabilities, and you check the interference and you see when you do this Fourier transform that, hey, this is the key that is correct. That's how the quantum computers are able to harvest all the, you've harvested all this traffic. It was encrypted with this modular arithmetic, and now you can decrypt it because you're able to pull out the noise and get the correct key. The way that lattice-based math works is it gets rid of that modulo. It gets rid of that clock arithmetic that's happening, and it's able to go and say, we're going to inject noise on either side, and it's going to be a statistically insignificant amount of noise, but it'll be enough noise that prime factorization becomes essentially impossible. And we have these little lattice slots that we're going to put our encryption into. The name, so Shor's algorithm is what you use to attack things in the classical encryption space, in the quantum encryption space. This post-quantum stuff, I forget the name of the key. I think it's like Kyber is one of them. And then there's another one that I can't remember the name of. But interestingly, the algorithms that are used here, you're still doing hybrid key exchange. So you still have more traditional, like non-post-quantum TLS happening at the certificate level for a ton of traffic. And then you have this hybrid key exchange that's happening at the quantum level. There were a lot of really nice talks at reInvent about specifically post-quantum key exchange and post-quantum encryption. And I think it's a fascinating area. If if you find this sort of stuff interesting, I'd encourage you to check it out. And what's really nice is I remember when we first rolled out TLS and how long it took the industry to adopt it and to use it correctly. And this seems to be getting adopted much more quickly. And AWS making post-quantum security such a first-party primitive across so many of their services is a testament to the focus they have on security. So shout out to them. Good work. TLS 1.3 post-quantum. Use it everywhere. We got a target optimizer in AWS ALB. This lets you say, hey, even though this thing isn't breaching health checks and I'm not getting too much RAM or too much CPU or anything like that, I do want you to limit the number of requests that are going to this. You can do this because you know that the underlying application gets slower as it's able to have over so many requests, or you can do it to limit blast radius. Like you don't want too many ongoing requests on a single instance. So it supports both of those things. Really great feature, helps something that we had been asking for a while. We got JWT verification in AWS ALB. This really helps in machine-to-machine and service communication, and it takes the OAuth token validation off of ALB. Importantly, fun tip, this is the verification of the JWT. You still have to check the authorization. So just because the JWT is correct and verified and the OAuth matches doesn't necessarily mean that the permissions that are there are correct. So you still may need to call out to another service to check the sub and to check to make sure that the ACL matches whatever you have stored on your side. But a nice quality of life feature that removes some undifferentiated heavy lifting from the ALB side. We got weighted target groups in NLB. This was already supported in basically all of the other load balancers. Was it supported in Gateway Load? I still don't think it's supported in Gateway Load Balancer, but this was already supported in all of the other load balancers. So really nice to see it in NLB. And this enables things like blue-green or canary deployments or application migration or weighted testing, all the things that you would like to do with traffic distribution at the NLB layer. So again, great launch. Thank you, NLB team. We got HTTP3 pass-through for NLB. Fun story, little story time moment. Back when I was at Facebook, which changed its name to Meta while I was there, we moved the mobile app and a number of other servers to HTTP3. And we saw 70% reduction in bandwidth across mobile. So because there are so many unreliable networks around the world, and because mobile and other things are not always, they can frequently receive, but they struggle to get the request out. By minimizing the amount of back and forth traffic, you can load these pages much faster, and you reduce a lot of the redundant send. So HP3 is a really cool protocol. You can do a lot of things with it. One of the things that's getting pretty complicated these days, and Route 53 has done a good job of this, is the layers of the OSI networking model have started to blur. So, it used to be application was very separate from protocol, and protocol was very separate from link, and there were all of these different things that were very clearly delineated. Those lines are beginning to blur as we enforce security at multiple levels, and HP3 is an example of some of that blur happening. Anyway, NLB getting pass-through support for HP3, another great win. I would be willing to bet that a ton of AWS service are actually building on top of this. And there's a number of mobile-facing workloads that involve some video data that I think we might end up building on top of this for our customers. And it's really cool that it's able to maintain the session stickiness. One weird thing about HP3 is that it is slightly more susceptible to amplification attacks and DDoS style amplification attacks. If you have questions around that, you should contact Caylent. We've helped a customer kind of mitigate some of those workloads. But HP3, awesome. Anytime you see quick, think HP3. We got CloudWin routing policies. Again, fine-grained control for routes and patterns across WANs. Can configure BGP attributes to influence behavior and meet more complex routing requirements. And the visibility into some of the routing tables is pretty helpful as well. So great launch. We do have some customers who are immediately taking advantage of this. This launch ticks me off more than any other launch that AWS did this year. I do not understand why they would launch this, not tell us the pricing. And the emotional roller coaster that happened on November 19th when they announced this, regional availability for AWS NAT Gateway. I thought, hey, no more do I need to pay in each subnet for a NAT Gateway endpoint and a port hour for these things. I will now have this amazing, beautiful single NAT gateway that just takes care of things for me. No, all this is auto scaling NAT, and you get charged when it's there in the subnet. So AWS, I feel like you took me on an emotional ride here. I got so excited. Everyone in Slack at Caylent, we were all like, "Oh my gosh, this is great! This is finally we've got it." And then we looked up the pricing, and it's really just the same NAT gateway. So I'm sad. What I would love to see, by the way, as an AWS networking appliance, is give me one endpoint that I can plug in to everything, and then I get to tell you via IAM or whatever mechanism you want, really, what services I want included. Having to have a transit gateway here, a egress only here, and manage all of this. I understand the need for complexity, but collecting port hours and things in a multi-tenant situation on these is just, it becomes an exercise in breaking apart some of the most convoluted networking constructs in the world. Pete Bird at Caylent is our networking guru, and he does a lot of great work with a bunch of customers to help them parse and trace these things. We got cross-region connectivity in AWS Private Link. I love this. I think this is a great service. One important point is that not every region can be cross-linked. So I don't remember the pairs of regions, but you can't go from like US East 1 to like Australia. At least you couldn't when I first started trying to use this. But the advantage here is, like, imagine you're a SaaS provider. Imagine you have something that you want to offer to your end users within AWS. You now, instead of having to give them multiple private links to go and like work with, you can put this in, you can put this same private link in multiple regions, and you're able to go and have many different things uh, working with this single interface. I think that's pretty cool. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that we're able to simplify with this. Kinesis Video Streams got a new warm storage tier. Also, it got a KDS got a much larger size. I think it got 10 megabytes instead of 1 megabyte record size. DNS got support for IPv6. What would be great for us to do actually is to make a slide that has the pace of IPv6 announcements from AWS over time. I think there's very few things out there that still don't support IPv6. IPv6 is great. We're using it for a ton of stuff internally because then we don't have to pay for NAT gateways. WAF got WebBot auth support. That was interesting. I believe that was originally a initiative from Cloudflare, and there's been a number of committee meetings on how to support CAPTCHAs and things in the age of generative AI, and I think that space is still evolving. There's interesting stuff there. We got flexible cost allocation for Transit Gateway. This, again, helps in that SaaS scenario that I was talking about of like allocating costs between various providers and various customers. ALB got health check logs. We got network firewall support for cost allocation via Transit Gateway. So that's the same thing as above. TLS 1.3 for CloudFront all the way through. CloudFront got 3 new CloudFront function capabilities. There was like an origin selection, a viewer request modification. There's one other thing. This was cool. The CBOR web tokens and common access tokens. These are pretty nice. These are more efficient than a JWT, and being able to have them supported on the CDN is powerful. If you're interested in kind of deploying certain workloads at scale through the CDN and you still want to have some form of auth, but you don't want to necessarily have to go out to like a Lambda at Edge or another endpoint, check out these CBOR web tokens. They're pretty interesting binary representation. Route 53 got support for private link. That is nice. We got more firewall support across everything. Then we also got IoT support for IPv6. We got a WebRTC multi-viewer for Kinesis video streams. Interesting thing here, you probably don't need this outside of development. Like once KVS is kicking and going along, like you're sort of just off to the races, but it can be very helpful. And like I said before, site-to-site VPN is now 5 times more bandwidth than what you previously had. So instead of 1 gigabit per second tunnel, now you get 5 gigabit per second tunnels. The number of times this would have saved us with some of these, it would have stopped us from having to go and get direct connect, basically, because we had a bunch of customers where their change data rate for some of these heterogeneous database migrations was so high that we were saturating that 1 gigabit per second VPN connection, and we would spin up more, and we made it work. But this certainly improves and opens up a lot of possibilities. Lattice supports custom domain names because someone realized that arbitrary letters and numbers are sometimes hard. We still treat our servers and our applications like pets. We don't want always to have just random IDs. CloudFront got cross-account support for VPC origins. This is like a chef's kiss launch. Thank you, CloudFront team. Really simplifies a lot of things, gets rid of a number of different weird routing rules that we used to do. We got IPv6 support for those anycast static IPs. And then, like I said before, Route 53 Resolver, which is now Route 53 VPC Resolver, got private link support. And then IPM got automated prefix list updates. And we got an AI agent context pack to throw into Greengrass. With that said, quick look at the comments and conversations. And Andrew correctly points out that if you do use the ALB target optimizer, it doubles your LCU count. It can still be worth it. So for the folks at some of these places where you want to be able to basically, it can still be worth it. I think doubling your LCU count is not quite as expensive as it may appear. All right. And now we're going to get into storage migration and transfer services. We got intelligent tiering for S3 tables. First of all, shout out to S3 tables. What a great service. Really enjoying that. Iceberg is everywhere. That's a theme of reInvent. A theme of AWS in 2025 and 2024 is a continued investment in modernization around Iceberg. So intelligent tiering in S3 tables makes perfect sense. Since this only recently came out, I can't corroborate these 68% lower cost numbers. What I will say is in the tests that we've run so far, it does appear to save a money. There's probably a threshold where the compaction and the other things that you need to do within S3 tables, like if you have to do column modifications, if you have to change some of the roll-ups, it may cause more. If you have stuff where, if you haven't accessed it in 30 days, but then you do a roll-up on the 31st day, I can see places where it might move it back into the standard storage class. We just need more time and we need to run more experiments to be able to give a ton of guidance on it. But initially, it looks like they did it just right, and I'm pretty confident that we could work out any of the weirdness. If anyone remembers when intelligent tiering originally launched, there was some weirdness around small files and API costs and things like that. All of that's really solved these days. We got automatic replication of S3 tables across regions and accounts. Great feature. Thank you. We got the general availability of S3 vectors. One graphic I'm working on that is something that tells you what storage and TPS does it now make sense to not use S3 vectors as the search function. So Garmin said in his keynote that since July, that 250,000 different vector indexes have been created, and then more than 40 billion vectors have been ingested, and over 1 billion queries have been performed as of November 28th. And I think this is a great feature. I really like it. I think this, combined with some of the metadata stuff, gives you a lot of capabilities. What I would love to see, and we had the opportunity to meet with both the S3 and the OpenSearch teams at reInvent. What I would love to see is a really solid interface and evolution of, say, Redshift or PG Vector or OpenSearch from these vector buckets, so that I can have a long-term immutable source of truth that lives in S3. But if I need to be able to serve a ton of requests, I can take advantage of these new OpenSearch GPU capabilities. Storage Lens got enhancements, much faster and able to work across billions of prefixes. Please do better if you've got billions of prefixes in one bucket. That's scary. Anyway, lots of cool stuff that you can do there, and support to export to S3 tables. Attribute-based access control for S3. That is music to my ears. So being able to use tags to enforce certain access or change prefixes around, it's a really powerful component. Would strongly encourage people to check this out. There's a lot of S3 identity pass-through stuff that started launching all the way back when they first did the lake formation stuff, and has continued to evolve since then. If you need help, by the way, with your data strategy, and hey, I see this feature, I see these SCPs, I see these bucket policies, I see all this stuff, I want to build just a data lake that works, you're welcome to come to Caylent. This is my sales pitch. I'm not good at it, but we work with this sort of stuff all the time. And you can kind of pick and choose which tools you want to use to get access to various things. We got conditional write and copy for S3. That was another really helpful launch. Saves some money if you're having to restart jobs. If you think about it, AWS's own S3 high performance logic, and even their own S3 client, which is their Java implementation for large scale S3 work, what it does is it tells you, hey, start multiple requests, because every now and then one of these routers gets slow or it gets over encumbered with other requests. And by being able to start multiple requests, you can just turn off the one that's going slowly. So this can help you prevent that sort of multiple copy object calls if you've got multiple things happening simultaneously, or if you're worried about item potency and things like that. Basically, get rid of the client-side coordination part. We got post-quantum key exchange in Amazon S3. Supports S3, S3 tables, and one zone, and MLKAM. Again, this is an interesting theme that exists throughout all of the pre-invent and reinvent launches, and post-quantum cryptography is a really cool set of techniques and tools. Great reinvent sessions. Go check them out. Air-gapped AWS backup vault is primary. This is complete and absolute overkill. If you really want to use this, you need to reevaluate your entire threat model. I can't, unless you're keeping nuclear codes, like, calm down. But if you want to blindly swipe your credit card, go ahead. KMS CMK for air-gapped backup vault. Again, absolute overkill. Whatever. Backup now supports EKS. I'm going to be honest, I don't fully get this one. I get that there's like this centralized platform through backup of, I want to back up this bucket. I want to back up this EBS. I want to back up this cluster. Like, what does backing up an EKS cluster really mean at the end of the day? Like, and why? And what's the restore component of it? I'm happy to learn more and be proven wrong, but I struggle to understand exactly how we would take advantage of the restore component of a cluster backup, because there's so many other things that come into play that I don't think this service magically solves that problem. It could be helpful, but if you're not keeping your stuff as infrastructure as code anyway, like, what are we really backing up? And I'm sure people are going to respond to that comment. So let me go see what people have said. Okay, no one's angry at me for being angry about air gap backup. Good. Single action copy, a snapshot copy and backup. That's, again, very helpful. This works for RDS, Aurora, all the RDS engines, Neptune, and DocDB. We got Transform Custom. This is the ability for people to inject their custom instructions and capabilities into Amazon Transform or AWS Transform. We built Caylent Accelerate before Transform was really out. It does a lot of app modernization. It does a lot of other capabilities. We actually leverage Transform for some of the assessment components and some of the other work underneath. I don't know. Jury is still out on how powerful this really is. I like that it's free. Things that are free are things that I'm willing to take advantage of. I'd like to revisit this in another few months and see where we land. But good job to the Transform team for getting this out. Also, the ability to use Transform to modernize .NET. .NET is what's interesting is this doesn't really go all the way back to the very early versions of .NET, which is where, unfortunately, we find a lot of our customers are still stuck. There's a weird set of dependencies on, DLLs and custom Windows code still. I don't think we're going to get to a magic button for those anytime soon. And in some ways, you should consider perhaps rewriting that, right? Like, we're in an age where rewriting some of that functionality is not so crazy. We had a customer that literally they can't even find the compiler for some of the stuff anymore. Like, the compiler doesn't exist on the internet. And so they have to recreate the business logic from scratch. ONTAP got S3 access. We increased the maximum object size to 50 terabytes from 5 terabytes. S3 batch operations got a bunch of performance improvements. Transform got, like we said, the agentic AI capabilities, mainframe support, all those other good things. S3 block public access has org level enforcement now. This is really helpful. There needs to be some flexibility there, but otherwise, fantastic. S3 metadata got support for basically all of the regions at this point. So you should use it. It's a really great tool and you can do all kinds of good things with it. Um, Backup got support for FSX. We got more recycle bin support for EBS. We got bucket level settings to standardize encryptions that are accepted or rejected. The AWS transfer family, not the WS transfer family. I'll fix that later. Announced Terraform modules, and we got IPv6 support across the board and better integration with Secrets Manager and AD. Getting into databases, database savings plans. If I could sing from the rooftops, hallelujah. The years we've been asking for this, thank you, AWS, for delivering. You can save up to 35% when you commit to 1 year term here. Makes perfect sense. It applies to Aurora, it applies to RDS, to Dynamo, to Elasticache, to DocDB, to Neptune, to Keyspaces, to TimeStream, and to DMS. That DMS one is important, by the way. That's a pretty powerful thing for it to apply to, and it actually affects a lot of the work that we do at Caylent, because we do a ton of these migrations. And for Dynamo and for Keyspaces, if you have on-demand throughput provision, you can get 18% savings, and you can leverage provision capacity still and still get 12% savings. So overall, great launch. Love the economics of it. Congrats to AWS. Congrats to all the AWS customers who are suddenly able to reduce their bill. Really looking forward to continuing to take advantage of this. Vectors got performance increases through one of the coolest features that I've seen in OpenSearch, where they throw a GPU on your Shindig, on your server, and the GPU does, your batch vector indexing and your vector search, even if needed, mostly the indexing though. And it tunes your index and does all of these other great things. And then when you're done, you can take the GPU away again. I love this. I think this is really, really cool. And congrats to the OpenSearch team. It's a brilliant idea. I think finding a way at some point to better support GPUs for search, to kind of have like a shared memory layer, a shared shard set of GPUs, and have things distributed so that you can really, especially with vector indexes, where you can like HNSW it down to whatever leaf node GPU happens to have that set of vectors on it. That's going to be pretty cool. I'm sure someone's working on that. I'm sure we'll get there in the next year or two. But really great launch. You got natural language search in OpenSearch that can take the language and generate a query, and also summaries. Another great launch. You could say things like find cars under 30 grand and show last quarter sales trends, and it'll go and create that query for you. We got dynamic data masking in Postgres. This is using the PG column mask. So I was playing around with this. I did hit some weirdness. So when I had subqueries, and then I basically had another query outside of it where I had accidentally basically put two different as this, as that names, I was still able to get the original data. Now, admittedly, that is user error. That is a poorly designed query. But overall, I think this is a really useful feature, and it'll be super helpful for HR systems, finance systems, and all kinds of other things. So pretty cool. Great work. Glad to see this as a feature. We got DSQL JDBC connection strings, so we don't have to use the IAM drivers anymore. We can go over the regular JDBC drivers. It still uses IAM token generation and everything on the back end, but great work and nice kind of improvement. It makes DSQL a little more accessible. We got a query editor in the console for DSQL. I'm going to skip that. This is the best thing to happen to DynamoDB since on demand, I would say. Maybe even more impressive than that. Greatest thing since sliced bread. We now have multi-attribute primary keys in GSIs. So no longer are you having to manually concatenate these values into these synthetic keys. Imagine having to like backfill and redo some of that work. Instead, you can just model the existing attributes into the PK and say, hey, this is how we're going to query this. To the entire DynamoDB team who got this done and launched this, a massive thank you from Caylent, from all the AWS developers out there. Thank you. Love it. Keep the good times rolling. Aurora DSQL now supports up to 256 terabytes of storage. This is true across a wide slew of different RDS instances. They all jumped up from 64 to 256 or 128 in one case, which I couldn't figure out why that limitation was. We got a bunch of IPv6 support. We are able to run RDS SQL Server at a lower price and run Developer Edition. The lower price is primarily from running fewer cores, so the way the licensing is done. Elasticache got IPv6. CloudWatch Database Insights added a couple of extra capabilities, and we got 8.0 for DocDB, and then we got an upgraded query planner that results in a large number of queries that are running within DocDB to go 10 times faster. Interesting story there. All right. Jumping into analytics, there were a number of announcements in pre-invent. reInvent itself actually didn't have too many analytics-focused announcements, but I think there's been a lot of good stuff that's happened throughout the year. So clean rooms, I'll be honest, we only have a few customers using clean rooms, and they're mostly in the ad tech space. And this is a way to generate synthetic data sets to help with training. Interesting launch. I can see where this would be valuable. Not sure our customers are going to immediately take advantage of it. Worth exploring. Iceberg. We get Iceberg everywhere now. This is so nice. We got Iceberg for EMR. We got Iceberg for Glue. We got Iceberg for SageMaker. We got Iceberg for S3 tables and Glue Data Catalog. So having Iceberg in all of these different places is really, really helpful. It makes sense. I think this is what the industry should standardize on, and it'll make moving all this stuff around a little bit easier. We got multi-warehouse federation for Redshift. Great, really useful. There's some weirdness, I think, around some of the compliance regimes. I do think the European environment is opening up a little bit with some of the data laws and some of the restrictions around these sorts of things. So in some ways, this may not be as vital in the future as it is now. But we'll see what happens. Who knows? And Redshift got rights to Iceberg. Again, fantastic. Iceberg everywhere. Iceberg catalog for Glue, we already talked about. We got zero ETL for self-managed databases. This is helpful. Zero ETL is like serverless. There's still ETL. It's just not... like serverless still has servers, zero ETL still has ETL, but it's helping run that ETL for you. I think this is a nice value add and something that we've already used with a customer, and it works pretty well. We got AI-powered data classification in SageMaker. This is helpful for generating glossaries and things like that. Use Bedrock on the back end to do a lot of it. We got a one-click dataset onboarding in SageMaker Studio. This is helpful for getting ready to do EDA or getting ready to materialize features from things or getting ready to use for training. We got a data agent in SageMaker Notebooks. This is really helpful for being able to pull things out and use things like natural language to get some of this stuff. I'll be honest, since 2024, I can't remember having handwritten a line of matplotlib, right? Like I just go to Claude or ChatGPT or Bedrock and I say, hey, here's what I want this graph to look like. Can you go do it for me? I also kind of do that with Spark these days. And I still handwrite a lot of SQL, unfortunately, but that's just the nature of the work that we do. We've got metadata rules for SageMaker catalog. This is great. Again, helpful, another facet and another set of information that you can use when you're standardizing access and information around assets and how people can leverage those assets. Serverless deployment for MWAA. This is great. I hated paying for MWAA. I think the minimum cost on the non-serverless one was something like $800 a month or $200 a month. I can't remember because I just made everyone turn it off. And so to all the Caylent folks that I yelled at for keeping these things around, I'm sorry. Please consider using the serverless MWA going forward. Yeah, I don't like paying for a control plane that's the front end that's not actually running any cron or anything like that. So I like the serverless one a lot better. And then we're only paying for the execution. Yeah, good work, Airflow team. You can view Kafka topics in the console now. That's a nice little quality of life improvement. We got an increased payload size for KDS. I think I said this earlier, so up from 1 megabyte to 10x. The Lambda still only supports the 6 megabyte size, but you can still directly invoke Lambda. Lots of probably not so great patterns that might happen with this. Pros and cons. Sometimes doing incremental work is better, but I like the flexibility. I like that I'm able to take full advantage of things that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to take advantage of. So thank you to AWS for giving us this flexibility. With great power comes great responsibility, and it is on us to go and fix all that. Oh man, a whole bunch of other updates, and Glue getting support for the DynamoDB connector right into the Spark data frame. That was really nice. The auto scaling for capacity reservations in Athena really helps with like BI jobs that run periodically. You got really nice support for Glue and EMR integrations where you have identity that you're concerned about, or audit context, or federated identity and fine-grained access control. And like I said, iceberg everywhere. We got support for KDS to go out to more fan-out consumers. That's also great. Redshift got a analyze for iceberg. The super type with case insensitivity in Redshift is a cursed launch because case insensitivity. I guarantee you I know which specific customer asked for this, and the year is 2025. We can do better. All of us as engineers, like, just rewrite the data. Anyway, we got a bunch of custom tags. SageMaker tagging and cost allocation continues to be a frustrating experience because not every resource and thing within SageMaker is taggable, and it also spins up a bunch of stuff in the back end that don't always inherit the tags that you put on one thing. So even if it's spinning up ENIs and all this other stuff, they don't get the tags. It also breaks if you have org level tag enforcement and requirements, because it'll spin stuff up in the back end. This breaks for Lambda too, by the way. And those things that it's spinning up in the back end will not inherit the tag requirements. And so you have to go and manually deploy certain things. Progress. I'll take progress any day of the week. So thanks again to AWS for making some progress on a lot of these things. Alrighty. Machine learning, AI, and generative AI. So we got SageMaker serverless model customization. The set of models supported here is less exciting than what I would hope, but an interesting launch, and it's supervised fine tuning and post training. So yeah, I can see where I would want to use this. I can see how I would use this, and I like not having to manage it. Other than that, I'm probably not going to use this with customers because things have gotten a little complex these days, and sometimes you want to inject more. You want to inject yourself into more places in the training process, let's say. I love MLflow. I love Kubeflow. I am really happy that there's a serverless MLflow capability in SageMaker AI now. Still costs money, but I like not having to have persistent resources around to be able to keep my MLflow AI views open. So thanks, great launch. Hope to see more in this realm, like being able to browse like the LLM eval stuff in MLflow would be really nice. Training plans for SageMaker AI inference. Yeah, these are interesting and complicated, and the guaranteed GPU capacity. Here's my chief frustration at this point is we now have like 6 different ways to request GPU capacity. I do think it should be centralized into a single base API. You can build abstractions on top of this. I imagine that this is built on top of the training reservations or the capacity reservations capabilities. But launching it in different namespaces and different features is a little overly complicated in my opinion. I would like to instead just have a single entry point where I can pass on those resources to the downstream service that needs them. Eagle decoding support got included in SageMaker AI, and this is extrapolation algorithm for greater language model efficiency. And it's a technique that lets you predict future tokens directly from the hidden layers of the model. It's pretty cool. It works with the Quinn 3 32 billion model. It just speeds up your overall end-to-end request latency. Good work. Hope to see more stuff in this space. We got bidirectional streaming for SageMaker AI, really helpful for the multimodal workloads. Helps with audio streams and not just audio. I mean, it's bytes over a wire. We can put whatever we want into the model and we can get whatever we want out of the model. So good times. Checkpointless training for Hyperpod. There are frameworks that support a lot of this already. So I don't know. This is great, really helpful if you're training these really large models. You obviously don't want to leave these hyperpods on for hours and hours while you're debugging stuff and paying the cost to reinitialize the cluster every time. Like, I get it. I understand why we would not want to be doing this all the time. That said, there are other mechanisms for achieving similar things, and there's you want to be able to keep your training run going and just silently recover from some of these failures. Elastic training for hyperpods, really cool. Auto scaling, to make it clear, you don't need the same number of GPUs the whole time. You have diminishing returns from parallelism as you train different components and different layers, and you kind of start out a little slow and you're just sort of seeing how things are converging. You're seeing how this section of the network is working, and then you might ramp up for your big parallel middle training, and then you might ramp back down as you're doing some of the post-training work. I think it's pretty cool, and I also think that it being able to absorb idle AI accelerators is also pretty cool. So it's you're taking advantage and cost optimizing all at the same time. Nova 2 came out for speech for Nova 2 Lite. They continue to be right at that edge of the price performance Pareto curve. 1 million token context. We've been playing around with it for a while, and I do think it's powerful. Nova 2 Lite has support for text, image, video, document, and it supports extended thinking with step-by-step reasoning. You can set the thinking budget to low, medium, or high. And it has 2 built-in tools, web grounding, which will go and look for citations on the web, and code interpreter. It does all this inline, so you don't have to do multiple back and forth requests. It's solid. It's also pretty darn fast. That's another thing that I don't think we talk about enough is you get the tokens quickly. I have not had this in production for anybody yet. Keep in mind, it's only 18 days old. Looking forward to seeing how we're able to get this in production with a customer and have it running for a little while and seeing the changes, right? So we've used the Nova models previously, and we're just early days. Hope to have more to share maybe by February. Nova 2 Pro, again, right in a good place. I don't think pricing for this one came out yet. I could be wrong, but I remember trying to look it up when we were working on this deck, and I couldn't find it. It's pretty ideal for complex tasks like agentic coding and long range planning and problem solving. And it has pretty strong benchmark performance. I do want to say benchmarks are a directional indicator. It's much better to have evals that are specific to your business use case. And it has a 1 million context window too. It's very good at tool calling. And yeah, I think this is probably going to find a good place in the next couple of weeks. These models, man, I mean, they move so quickly at this point that it's really difficult to just say, hey, this is the one to use for now, because they're also differentiating themselves in terms of capability and what they're delivering. We also got Nova 2 Omni. This is an any to any model. This is all-in-one model for multimodal reasoning and image generation. It supports text, images, video, speech inputs, while also generating both text and image outputs. So it doesn't support audio outputs, but does support audio input. And it's a 1 million context window, 200 different languages supported, and 10 languages for speech input. The multimodal understanding is pretty darn good. And we have had issues with some of the spatiotemporal relationships that exist longitudinally across videos in the past. And this seemed to perform better on those, which was nice. And yeah, we actually built a demo. Guille and Facundo and a couple of other people at Caylent, they built this system that generates Caylent cards. So if you've seen, trading card games, maybe a popular one owned by a litigious brand that, we all used to play in the 90s, you can emulate those cards, and you can take a photo and it'll generate your Caylent AWS card. And we used Nova 2 Omni to build that. And I think someone might be able to post a link to that. And then we got Nova 2 Sonic. This is an improvement over the first Sonic. What I like about Sonic is that it's not just multimodal, it's mixed modal. So I can have tool call responses coming back in text while I've still got the voice coming back over voice. And the emotional modulation and the language support for Portuguese and Hindi are nice. And I still think the voice activity detection can be improved here. I don't think it's as good as some of the other models that are out there. But the mixed modality stuff is really cool. I'm especially excited to be able to use this in the contact center space, where we will be able to do out-of-band tool calls and send that back to the Lambda that's executing, and then we'll be able to keep the voice interaction going. One of the things that's kind of interesting across the contact center use cases is I would love to be able to inject, pauses and things like that, where I can say, blah, blah, blah. So as something's executing in the background, instead of Nova 2 Sonic having to generate a voice and generate silence even, I can inject my own noise. And that would be a cool feature that I think is possible at this point, because you control the stream. You can put whatever bytes you want in. Nova Forge. This one's really exciting to me because I love this idea of being able to take my training data set and use it in both pre-training, to use it in mid-training and in post-training. So I can take one of the Nova models, and and this is multimodal, by the way. It's not just text. I can take my business-specific data, and I can go and at multiple checkpoints throughout the training process, put that data in. And then I still get Amazon's proprietary information put back into the model as well. So really excited to take advantage of this. I think there are a number of active Caylent customers that are pursuing work with this. Because we haven't done one of these training runs yet, I can't tell you how great or good the results are going to be, but I hope to be able to report back next year and tell you, hey, look at, we were able to get this done, we were able to get that done. I think it could be a game changer. And right now, this is the only hyperscaler that offers this sort of capability of being able to mix your proprietary data with their proprietary data in the curated data set. Great. We got the general availability of Nova Act. This is the computer use SDK. Nova Act is fine. it is not as good as some of the other computer use agents. It is faster than most of them, which is good. I think computer use is an interesting set of tools and evolution that are still gonna take another couple months to get to the point where we can use them reliably across virtually everything. We're getting closer every day. So excited to see the evolution here. Web grounding we talked about already. This is inline citations. We got Nova multimodal embeddings. Pretty impressed with the performance of these so far. We had a couple of customers go through and try these already. And one thing you do need to be careful about is it doesn't magically deal with all of the chunking for you. There's control planes and APIs on top of it that will deal with the chunking for you, but they can take in up to 8,000 tokens, and then you can structure things however you want. I really like some of the work that the and when I say it doesn't do the chunking for you, it will do the chunking on like the video, right? Like if you pass in video or audio, it will send you back a whole list of chunks via synchronous and asynchronous invocations. And it's great for batch. I don't know if batch is fully supported yet or if that's now called Flex. We'll talk about that in a second. But what's really interesting lately to me have been some of these hierarchical embeddings. So the Vantage or Voyage, the Voyage embeddings from that I think MongoDB acquired. I really like that idea of hierarchical embedding because you're keeping some of the structure of the document or information throughout the entire invocation. So overall, pretty excited about the multimodal embeddings. We're going to keep using them and keep doing stuff with them, and we'll have some cool results to share in the new year. We got reinforcement fine-tuning in Bedrock. I mean, this is helpful. You can get significant accuracy gains. We got a bunch of new Mistral models. We actually got a ton of new open source models on Bedrock, but the new Mistral models are pretty great. The really cool thing about the Mistral 3 billion parameter model is like you can actually quantize it down and run it in your web browser if you have enough RAM, and it'll run in WASM, and you'll get, tens of tokens per second doing that, which is wild that you can just run one of these LLMs in a web browser. We got multimodal retrieval for knowledge bases, support across text, images, audio, and video content. We got test generation for automated reasoning. Automated reasoning remains one of my favorite features. It is a little slow. I wish it was faster. But the test generation component of this is nice, right? Because I can go and instead of having to use my human brain to come up with ways for my agents to fail, I can have automated reasoning go and generate some of those tests for me. This is interesting. And again, a piece of frustration for me from Bedrock is like, just tell us the actual pricing. Don't hide behind the most convoluted pricing page and marketing page in the history of web design. So I'll break it down for you. I posted about this when it first came out on the 18th. Essentially, your priority tier is 75% more expensive. Your standard tier is your regular token price. By the way, you need to use global endpoints now if you don't want to pay a 10% surcharge for the regional endpoints. Flex is the same as batch, so it's a 50% discount. And then if someone in the comments can correct me if I was wrong, because I'm trying to remember if priority was 25% more or 75% more. I should have put that in my speaker notes. Apologies. Right now, Flex, Standard, and Priority are only supported by a subset of models, and Anthropic is not in that set of models, or at least it wasn't when I reviewed this. Reserved is predictable performance with guaranteed capacity. Now, that is helpful, and you can provision for 1 month or 3 months. And we already have customers taking advantage of this. It makes a lot of sense. It's a good thing to do if you know you're going to need this many tokens. A lot of the intelligent document processing workloads that we deal with use something like reserve tier, and I think we'll continue to see more of that. What is interesting about it is that a lot of these workloads have auto-scaling spikes, And so I think as the AWS team is able to get better visibility across the various tenants that they manage of the spikes in the workload, they're only going to get better and better at managing capacity here. So hopefully that increased utilization and that better capacity management can be passed on to users. And hopefully, like Flex right now, I think is the same as batch. It's like up to 24 hours. Hopefully we can get that flex time down even lower. All right. We got 4 new image editing tools in Bedrock. These are just expanding the stability components. Some of these were supported in the Nova models as well. Things like outpaint, fast upscale, conservative upscale, creative upscale, and more precise control essentially over the images that are produced from the stability side. We got policies in Amazon Bedrock Agent Core. This is where you can use natural language essentially to create a CEDAR policy that will execute on the returned information. This is code that will go and say, you are not allowed to do these things. So CEDAR is a powerful open source policy language. It's been around for a little while now. I think it's the same thing that is used by Amazon Verified Permissions. And it can identify prompts that are overly permissive, overly restrictive, and or contain conditions that can never be satisfied. We got Agent Core evaluations. This is, again, a helpful feature. I do think the ecosystem of Agent Core has become relatively complex because you've got Bedrock Model Evaluator, you have Bedrock Agent Core evaluations, and then you have MLflow LLM evaluations. There's a lot of different ways to do evals. There's a lot of different ways to do observability. I will take what I can get. I think this is a perfectly fine launch and something that we could immediately leverage. Bedrock Agent Core got bidirectional streaming. Great, means we can do multimodal stuff now. We got direct code deployment, upload a zip, a little bit easier than having to make a container every time. We got updates to Strands agents. We got TypeScript support for Strands agents. Shout out to all of my fearless JavaScript users or TypeScript users, I guess. For me, I'll stick with Python. I still get angry every time I have to npm install something. All right. The OpenAI GPT OSS response API is now supported. So you can call that. There were another 18 fully managed open weight models. SageMaker Hyperpod got a bunch of enhancements like managed tiered KV cache and intelligent routing. So it knows where the KV cache for that session is going to be. Support for spot instances, multi-instance GPUs. This is pretty cool. You got 4.5 Opus came out. Poly got some expansions. BDA got support for additional languages. Agent Core Browser can deal with WebBot auth. That was what we talked about earlier. And we got the 12 Labs embed, and now we also have 12 Labs video understanding model. I think the 12 Labs models are pretty darn good. So good work to 12 Labs team. All right, we're going to get into serverless now. I am running out of steam. There's not enough coffee in the world. We got MCP proxy support for API gateway. Great, thank you. We got private integration with ALB for API gateway. This is really nice because you don't have to put like an NLB in a place anymore. You can just remove that whole situation and instead go direct to the ALB. We got response streaming for API gateway, so it's not going to buffer anymore. This helps with pass-through. Again, interesting pros and cons here. We can talk about those at another date. Developer portals for API gateway. What's interesting is I thought this feature already existed because we would build these little open API based portals and just host them on S3 for customers. But this is a little bit more than that. And a really helpful, nice quality of life launch. Thank you to the API gateway team for making this easy. AWS Lambda durable functions. Lambda had 3 really important launches. Durable functions are like a regular Lambda function with the same event handler integrations that you already are aware of. You write sequential code in your whatever programming language you want to use, and you can suspend the execution up to 1 year at these defined points, and then you're not paying for idle compute while you're waiting. Durable functions, they use this checkpoint and replay mechanism, and you do need to use their SDK, so you have to put their SDK into your code base. Um, I have to say, like, this further complicates what we were saying earlier of, do I use step functions? Do I use durable functions? Do I use ECS? Do I use EKS? I really am excited to work with the Caylent team to come up with a prescriptive set of guidance around how to build compute with all of these different offerings now. I'm pretty bullish on durable functions. I really like them. I think it's going to be great. AWS Lambda got managed instances. This lets you run your functions on EC2 instances. I got all excited about this, and then I found out it doesn't support the GPU instances yet. That said, some people in some sessions said that it might be on the way, so hopefully we will have GPUs to use later. This is nice, right? Because we can basically have Lambda manage these instances for us, but we need more hardware, steady state, predictable stuff, or we might want to be able to burn down our compute savings plans or reserved instances. And instead of having to do that with Lambda, we can now do it with these EC2 instances. And we have all the regular integration points. So I think this is going to be used in a bunch of different places. I do think we're probably waiting on a couple more features here before it really gets going. We got tenant isolation mode for AWS Lambda. This is effectively provided at no additional cost. What happens is, like, as you create tenants and you mark on tenants, it will do a separate execution. Tenant isolation mode is going to be fantastic for SaaS apps. So if you've built your SaaS on top of Lambda, or this really is a great feature. I am pretty excited about it. I do have multiple customers already who are jumping into this one. And yeah, this is a great launch from the Lambda team. Thank you. We got Rust support. We had a Caylent engineer send me a Rust example the other day, and I was like, oh, who are we using Rust with? No, this is great. Good job to the Lambda team for launching this. Interestingly, this is built on top of a new runtime. But yeah, we got a test state support in step functions that makes it a lot easier to test these things. We got a visual builder for event bridge rules. We got serverless MCP server support for ESM, event source mappings. This is open source. You can run it locally. Really, this is just a collection of prompts again. AWS Lambda got support for Node.js 24. We got support for Python 3.14. Very importantly, in Python 3.14, you cannot turn off the global interpreter lock. We got support for Java 25, Corretto 25, like I said earlier. Fair queues, again, so when you're in this situation where you have multiple tenants, the fair queues are a nice way of balancing those workloads. And, some other nice quality of life features. Developer tools, management and governance. Kiro. Kiro is AWS's agentic IDE. We have been using it for quite some time now. Spec-driven development, vibe coding. It's an opinionated way of building things, and I think they could be right. It could be the right opinion. I don't know. I'm still on the fence. There's Cursor, there's Claude Code. There's a large number of different ways of doing. There's Codex from OpenAI. There's many different ways of doing agentic coding these days, and this is sort of one of them. And it's hard for me to advise people to make a long-term bet on any one of these because of how quickly things continue to evolve. AWS support, got to be honest, AWS support used to be something that I would rave about. I thought it was one of the greatest things. We really got fantastic people responding to questions. I open support tickets today, and people will copy paste things with the original prompt in it and said, if you need to send this to the user. I need support to do better. I don't know if Matt Garman or anybody out there can hear this, but AI generated replies are really frustrating when you have a production outage and the person's not even reading the ticket. So while I think this transformation is nice and the 5-minute response time of global experts for $50,000 a month is worth it for a number of customers, we got to see some improvements across the board. Automated management and service quotas. This is nice. It doesn't actually do the management for you. You still have to go and say things, but it just gives you the visibility. So not the most cleverly named feature. AWS DevOps agent. This is a frontier agent that helps reduce the mean time to resolution by helping you triage incidents. It works with CloudWatch, Datadog, Dynatrace, GitHub Actions, GitHub GitLab CI/CD. Very interested in this. There's no programmatic interface for it yet, by the way. I think that'll probably come out, but I am really interested in diving deep on this one and seeing how Caylent can build our own sort of managed services platform around parts of this agent. We got unified management and CloudWatch for our analytics, security, and compliance. CloudWatch really does seem to be more and more the destination for everything from VPC flow logs to CloudTrail, VPC WAF logs, ETL stuff. Yeah, I think this is great. I think CloudWatch is a good place to materialize a lot of those things. Being able to pull in from CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, Okta, Intra, Wiz, Zscaler, Palo Alto, Office 365, Windows event logs. Oh no, GitHub, and everything in between. So thank you. Great launch. Delete protection for logs. Yes, thank you. We got code commit. The rumors of my demise were premature. Code commit has returned to generally available. If anyone's been following the GitHub news that recently happened, maybe maybe that's a good thing, right? We got deployment ordering for stack sets, amazing. Drift aware change sets in CloudFormation, amazing. We got a better development pipeline for CloudFormation, so being able to quickly figure out why something is failing without having to do all this roll forward, roll back stuff. Really, really helpful. Saves a lot of time in your development cycles. We got a language server for CloudFormation, which really helps if you're using VS Code or another IDE that supports language servers, can help you work with CloudFormation much faster. CloudTrail insights for data events. This is useful, and there are other launches around this one that make it even more useful because sometimes you want compliance and auditability without having to pay for both CloudTrail and CloudWatch. And this gives you some of those capabilities and also gives you some of the roll-up and aggregate capabilities. The enforce required tag key with infrastructure as code. So this integrates with Terraform and Pulumi. And it also works with the AWS tag policies, tagging compliance, validator hook, and CloudFormation. Great extension of the tag policies capabilities. And it will tell you before it goes and deploys things rather than it failing and then you having to figure out that this was an SCP that has to go and do things. We got billing transfer for AWS organizations. Amazing, amazing. Thank you. For years, we've been asking for this. It saves a ton of time and effort and support conversations. Dedicated controls in AWS Control Tower, automatic enrollment in AWS Control Tower. Again, thank you. This should have been the way that it worked the whole time, but we have it now, so we'll take it. Thank you. Figuring out via this agent how an AWS SDK call maps to an IAM action, IAM policy autopilot. This is very helpful. Another collection of prompts that can help you quickly understand what IAM policy you need in order to be able to invoke the thing that you're trying to invoke. We got the AWS MTP server again. This is the hosted one, I guess, and this has access to docs and things like that. And yeah, we'll see when this is a little more publicly available, but I think this could be a really great tool. MCP proxy, like we said, is generally available. This was open source, and you can also have it in a number of other places. So many other enhancements and announcements, AWS Compute Optimizer, Cost Optimization Hub, all of these great things, Cur 2.0, EC2 OCDR, and fault injection service got support for a bunch of new things. And we got direct account transfers between organizations, so you don't have to remove an account from an organization, add it to the new organization. You can just go between the two. We're really cooking with gas. We're getting a lot of great things from AWS these days. We got the security agent. Again, really excited about these frontier agents. I think a lot of stuff is going to happen. We have real-time risk analysis and security hub. We got extended threat detection for EC2 and ECS. AWS login, like a holy grail. I no longer have to use Assume and all of these other tooling. I can just use AWS login. I think this is very helpful. Amazing launch from the AWS CLI team. Thank you. Please, if you are some convoluted, crazy way of working with AWS credentials in the past, this is your answer and your support for going forward. We got outbound identity federation. I mean, maybe AWS could just replace Okta at this point with IAM and IAM Identity Center. I feel like this is all you really need. Malware protection for AWS backup. Thank you. Post-quantum certificates we've already talked about. We got machine-to-machine pricing simplification, Amazon Cognito. When they say simplification, it got cheaper and it got easier to explain and deal with. So thank you. I do think maybe this shouldn't cost anything, but whatever. SES supports IPv6. Secrets Manager got managed external secrets, and IAM got AWS Source VPC yarn as a condition key. This is very helpful in a number of different things. In terms of business applications, we got knowledge-based support in Connect, we got MCP support in Connect, we got multi-skill agent scheduling in Connect, we got persistent agent connections in Connect, we got conversational analytics in Connect, and then there's all kinds of other things that happen with Connect where like there's Connect unified, all the AI features, all this great stuff now. There's been a sort of revitalization of Connect, and most importantly is you got support for third-party speech-to-text and text-to-speech models. I think right now it is only 11 Labs and DeepGram, but in the future, if they allow us to go to any arbitrary model, that will mean that Amazon Connect is able to go at any point in time and take advantage of the state of the art instead of being solely dependent on the first-party models that are available within AWS or Lex. Amazing, great work from the Connect team. Could not be more excited about the future of Connect. I was very worried prior to some of these launches. So thank you. This recap was primarily created by a great group of people at AWS. And there are a ton of recaps that are happening around the world. You can scan this QR code. You can go and find out more about where those are. I am going to probably do this 2 or 3 more times as these things evolve and as I get more and more hands-on with each of these things. If you're a developer and you want to stay connected with AWS, check out any of these different places. You've got Instagram, you've got Twitter, you've got LinkedIn. There are so many great videos from the reInvent sessions this year. This is just a small collection. Also, please be sure to check out David Victoria and Brian Tarbox's session, Dev 317 and Dev, I think, 301. I'll correct that later if I'm wrong. My name is Randall Hunt. Thank you for sticking around for 2 hours and listening to all of this interesting stuff. I think later this year, or early next year, what we'll do is a post around some of the overall themes and less of the individual list of features and how you should be taking advantage of these things going forward. With that, I have to go do my actual day job now. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your week and a wonderful weekend and happy holidays.